It's simply wrong for a country like the United Kingdom to acquiesce in or to accept inequality of opportunity when we have talent and potential everywhere, and individuals who deserve to have the chance to shine are denied it because of circumstances beyond their control. So both an economic and a moral mission, which all One Nation Conservatives, and indeed I think all Conservatives, should and have united behind.
Just a welcome for myself. I'm Ben Howlett. I was an MP, but left quite quickly. Thank you, Mrs. May, in 2017. And I've also been a councillor as well, too. I founded Curia, the policy institute that's published this book 2 years ago with a range of colleagues who really were interested in turning policy into practice. And that's really what we're all about here at Curia. And it's been an absolute privilege to work with the contributors to this book. But first of all, I just want to say a huge thank you to our sponsors for tonight, which is Q5. You'll find their leaflet, which I don't actually have, so they've all gone, which are sitting on your desks. And they'll be joining us upstairs for some drinks later on. And also thanks to JBP, who we really couldn't do this event without. In particular, Jennifer Bryant Pearson and her entire team, who have been absolutely fantastic over the last few years as we've been launching the organisation. So they're there for all your strategic communications needs. Please feel free to have a chat with any of the team later on tonight. Just want to say a quick few thank yous because we don't have a huge amount of time tonight. But, you know, it was, 2 years ago, I think we first sat down to talk about this, Robert. And wow, what a whirlwind it's been over the last 2 years. Not just withstanding the political changes that have happened over the last few years, but certainly it's been a really inspiring piece of work to really help a group of brilliant thought leaders in and across the Conservative Party think about what they want to do next in terms of levelling up. And, you know, over the last few years, we've been working really closely together to really sort of think about how we can deliver real change in the levelling up agenda. Excuse me. So huge thank you to those that have been working really hard behind the scenes in order to do it. Excuse me, I'm also losing my breath as well at the same time. In particularly the MPs, but also Sam and Andy and all the others who've been working behind the scenes in order to publish this work. So I hope you enjoyed tonight. I'm going to hand over to Robert because if I don't hand over, I think I'm going to lose my breath completely. And he will be setting out what his vision is for Levelling Up 2.0. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ben. I've been told to speak into the microphone, but as you know, most of you know, I'm a proud Welshman, so I don't really need a microphone. But look, I'm going to take you back 40 years, well before we got to levelling up, to a young man growing up in a very unfashionable part of the United Kingdom, southwest Wales. Not that dissimilar from the unfashionable part of the United Kingdom in which my great friend and former debating adversary Michael Gove grew up in. He grew up in a granite semi-detached house in Aberdeen, and I grew up in a red brick semi-detached house in Llanelli. And we were both from very unfashionable parts of the world, both parts of the world that had suffered from industrial decline, from industries that had been the lifeblood of our communities, but which we saw fall about our ears. For me, it was the steel industry particularly that literally I saw tottering and collapsing and disappearing with very little to replace it, little hope for the people whose lives have been invested in that industry, including members of my family. And it was with great hope and encouragement that I saw a Conservative government in the 1980s, led by Margaret Thatcher and Michael Heseltine and other visionaries who created those wonderful development corporations in places like Liverpool and Cardiff Bay, and revitalised the economies of those communities and changed lives for good, government intervening in a targeted and appropriate and sensible way for the long term, not just for the lifetime of a parliament. So imagine my excitement when 30 years on as a member of the cabinet, I was able to support with Michael a manifesto that set out in bold terms the same vision that I'd believed in all those years ago. That's what levelling up is for me. It's not just about bricks and mortar and roads and bridges, important though they are. It's about the people. It's about the communities that live in places that are often unfashionable, left behind and forgotten. And that's why I was delighted to collaborate with the team on a compilation, a book that offers a truly one nation approach to a policy that I think is much more than just slogans and words. And when, as I say in my foreword, you read the white paper that Michael sponsored when before his sabbatical from Dulac, when you read the detail, when you see the metrics in the appendix to that white paper, you will realize that this is a serious granular exercise in hard facts and hard achievement, with targets, with ambitious targets for the end of the decade on the issues that matter to people. And I think a resolute focus on those targets is, I think, the absolute epitome and the essential prerequisite of this policy if it is to succeed. And as is underpinned in the white paper, that longer term cross-parliament project management that is going to be crucial, with accountability at the heart of it. So the ability of government, and indeed local government and regional government, to measure and to test and to hold to account those responsible for the administration of these budgets. During Michael's summer sabbatical last year, we were a bit like the boy and girl in the weather house last year. Michael went in and I came out into government again and did my bit in the Welsh office, administering the Shared Prosperity Fund for communities in Wales that, believe you me, really had been left behind. I can tell you the sense of achievement in working directly with local government in a meaningful way was something that I'm very, very proud of. And to hear from leaders of local councils and local government about the value that they placed in direct engagement with government at Whitehall and Westminster was something that I took huge encouragement from, because as a passionate, committed unionist, you know, this country is more than its institutions. It's about its communities. It's about its towns, its villages, its people. It's about the family ties that bind us right across the length and breadth of these islands. That's what the United Kingdom means to me. I know it means the same to Michael too. And it means that to many of us in this room. And therefore we are doing this not just because we believe in these communities, but we believe in the essential quality of our United Kingdom, the values that we represent, and the fact that no community deserves to be left behind. No community need be left behind, because there are people of real potential and quality in every community. And the fact that in the past, people like me have had to make the long journey out of our communities to achieve success in our careers should no longer be necessary in this age of digitalization, remote connectivity, and the change that we've seen to our way of working. We need people of quality to be in those communities, to lead those communities, to be part of the developing life of those areas. And that's what levelling up means to me. That's why it's important. And that's why I hope that this book pushes the message on, passes the message on in a powerful way, not just to those responsible for the administration of this policy, but to so many of you in this room who have a role locally and regionally and who can help make it happen. Because this book isn't just about MPs talking. We have the excellent contribution of Andy Street, who I think has made an outstanding contribution as Mayor of the West Midlands, has shown the way, along with Ben Houchen and other excellent regional leaders, the power that can be exerted for public good when we devolve with confidence in a way that makes sense to local communities and which can make a difference. You know, the shuffling round of deck chairs in a sort of Harold Wilson way will not work. This has to be meaningful devolution. And that's why I think at the heart of the Levelling Up White Paper, we have substance, we have purpose, and we have a blueprint for success. We've now just got to get on with it. So on that happy note, I'm going to hand over to my old friend, the Secretary of State, Michael Gove.
I'm really grateful to Robert, and I'm really grateful to all the authors of this fantastic book for the work that they've done. Robert, as he reminded us, as Secretary of State for Wales, but also as Lord Chancellor, is someone who's represented the one nation tradition within the Conservative Party throughout his entire political career. And when we talk about one nation, sometimes he was a bit sort of antique and fusty, you know, Disraeli, 19th century, all the rest of it. Actually, it has never been more relevant. The one nation tradition within the Conservative Party represents, to my mind, the very best of the Conservative Party's tradition, and it is essential to its future. Because what that tradition is about is recognizing, again, these are Disraeli's words, but they resonate now, that the Conservative Party is a national party or it is nothing. We have to represent every community, every region, every nation, every tradition, every individual within the United Kingdom. If our politics is based on pitting groups against each other, or if our politics is neglectful of any part of the United Kingdom on the basis that they won't vote for us or that's a no-go zone, then we forfeit the right to govern. Because we can only govern effectively and successfully if we are seeking to address the needs of every part of the United Kingdom, our entire national community. And that's represented in the authors in this book here. So Robert, a proud son of Llanelli, but also someone who's representing a fantastic community in Swindon, a still fast-growing and dynamic town, but a town which also has social problems as well that require to be addressed. Faye Jones, who represents, of course, in Brecon and Radnor, rural Wales, which is beautiful, of course, but also contains within it some of the areas with the lowest productivity within the United Kingdom. It's also why I'm delighted. Also here we have Jane Stevenson, the Member of Parliament for Wolverhampton North East. Jane is someone who is a proud, I'm sure I'll pronounce this or mispronounce this wrongly, Wolframian, is devoted to the community that she represents and recognises that within the Black Country, there are a multitude of factors that require to be addressed in order to make sure that its citizens get the leadership that they deserve. Catherine Fletcher from South Ribble, from that part of Lancashire, which is both at the heart of Britain's continuing industrial strength, but also contains within it its own social problems, and is, of course, cheek by jowl with Preston, one of the most challenging of our towns when it comes to making sure that people can have and play a full part in the lives of our communities. But most importantly of all, we also have represented as authors here Sam Chapman-Allen, the leader of the District Councils Network, and Andy Street, the Mayor of the West Midlands Combined Authority. And the reason why I single them out for praise is not because I'm cheekily dismissing Bim Afalami, the brilliant economic thinker who, elected in the 2017 intake, has done so much to help reshape our thinking, and I'll touch on that in just a second, but because at the heart of Levelling Up is community empowerment. It is local leadership. And at the heart of our Levelling Up White Paper, as we run through our missions, is a drive to ensure that we strengthen the hands of local leaders who are the instigators, the godparents of the changes that we want to see. What are those changes? Well, the first thing to note is, as the book lays out, one of the unique challenges of the United Kingdom is that we're one of the most economically, geographically unequal states in the developed world. There are a million things of which to be proud in the United Kingdom. And I am not one of those, as you would expect, who is prepared to be either cynical or pessimistic about our future. But I am realistic about some of the challenges that we've inherited and which Robert alluded to. This geographical inequality means that in London and the Greater Southeast, we have a higher proportion of high-paying jobs, of highly productive firms, and indeed of government spending in areas like research and development, certainly historically. And that has helped to power success. We don't want to take anything away from those successes. We don't want to dampen down the animal spirits that have been responsible for London being the world's most attractive global city. We don't want to do anything to undermine the research success of Oxford and Cambridge. But we do want to address the fact that as you move further away from our capitals, not just further away from London, but also further away from Edinburgh and indeed Belfast and Cardiff, you find that productivity drops, that the educational attainment becomes more variable, that the quality of jobs on offer, again, becomes less high. All of these are entrenched challenges and challenges that we faced for decades now. Because again, these challenges are partly a consequence of deindustrialization and globalization. They're partly a result of the proud industries that were responsible for providing not just investment, but dignity to those communities, having over time found that their place in the global economy and their place in our local and national economies was eroded. So we all know that for significant parts of the West Midlands and the North, that the strengths that we had in steel and in shipbuilding, in coal and in automotive, built Britain's prosperity, but also provided for those communities a focus of loyalty and, critically, pride. As we've seen our country change economically, of course we remain a country with much to be proud of in manufacturing terms, not least in the automotive sector, and in new sectors from life sciences to the renewable sector. But it is still the case that the scarring that was endured in those communities as a result of the departure of those principal employers, those industries of the past, requires to be addressed. Why does it require to be addressed? Well, again, if you're a one-nation conservative, for two reasons. One, simply for economic efficiency. Unless you make sure that every part of the country is firing on all cylinders, then you're simply not making the most of the productive capacity of your country. So if there's anyone here who is, and I'm looking around and seeing Baroness Bottomley and a variety of other figures here, I don't think there's anyone here who is just a desiccated calculating machine, interested only in profit and loss. All of you are compassionate conservatives. But if there was anyone here who was inclined to take that view, who was concerned only with economic outcomes in the narrowest sense, you would believe in levelling up, because you would recognize that unless we make the most of every talent, unless every community is achieving its full potential, then as a country we are destined to fall further behind our international competitors, will generate less of the wealth on which our public services rely. But for me, important as the economic argument is, a far more important argument is a moral one. It is simply wrong for a country like the United Kingdom to acquiesce in or to accept inequality of opportunity when we have talent and potential everywhere, and individuals who deserve to have the chance to shine are denied it because of circumstances beyond their control. So both an economic and a moral mission, which all one-nation conservatives, and indeed I think all conservatives, should and have united behind. So what do we do about it? Well, here, and it's perhaps a coincidence that I'm making this reference today, you have to think about cakes. We all know that there is no such thing as a cake that depends on a single ingredient. And when it comes to levelling up, there is no silver bullet, no single lever. For me, the most important thing is the empowerment of local government and the provision of local leadership. But It is not the case that a single step is enough. In the 1980s, one of the areas that was levelled up was London Docklands. London Docklands had been an area of thriving economic activity right up until the 1970s, and then went into relatively precipitate decline for a host of reasons. Early on in the lifetime of Margaret Thatcher's government, it was the case that the Treasury, at that point under Geoffrey Howe's leadership, said, you know, there really is a silver bullet for the Docklands. All you need to do is deregulate and lower taxes, and that will be enough. There was another figure in the government of that time, Michael Heseltine, who said, look, lowering taxes, yes. Deregulation, particularly in planning, absolutely. But that is not going to be enough. We need to have active leadership. We need to think about transport infrastructure. We need to think about housing. We need to think about an active partnership with the private sector in order to attract individuals to this area. It's not enough simply to clear away the relics of the past. It is vitally important that we irrigate the soil for investment. And it was Michael Heseltine's vision that prevailed in persuading Margaret Thatcher that was the right way forward, but prevailed also in leading to London Docklands becoming one of the most economically successful, one of the most vital parts of the most vital city on earth. And it's recognizing that you need to bring all of those factors together. That if you want to attract investment capital, that you also need to make sure that you have rich social capital, rich cultural capital, that you have the connectivity that comes from physical infrastructure links, but also from digital infrastructure links. That if you're going to have people who are going to grow up and stay in a community that they love, and if you're also going to get the investment from outside necessary to make a success of that community's talents and the latent potential there, then you need to think about all of the things that make an area attractive. Have you dealt effectively with crime and antisocial behavior? Have you made sure that there are cultural institutions in which people can take pride? Are you confident that there are green spaces and there is the environmental resilience and attractiveness that goes to make a community both a source of pride, but also the attractive destination for future investment? Unless you do all of these, then you won't achieve the long-term sustainable investment that you want. And that's why, again, I'm so glad that Andy Street has contributed to this book, because Andy exemplifies in the way in which his vision for the West Midlands is laid out what is required. His vision is unapologetically a private sector-led vision for economic growth. But in order to make it work, Andy is prepared to use every lever, prepared to throw every ingredient into the cake mix, from making sure that the trains linking people from Wednesbury to the heart of Birmingham work as they should, to making sure that he collaborates with JLR and other automotive manufacturing leaders, to making sure that whether it's Warwick University or Birmingham University, those at the cutting edge of high-value manufacturing or life sciences are involved in his mission, and making sure that the significant cultural strengths that the West Midlands, and not just Birmingham, have, are leveraged into making it an increasingly attractive destination. All of these are the key ingredients to making the cake rise, to attracting the private sector, and making sure that the productivity gap that had existed in the past is being progressively closed. One final thing. Levelling up, of course, requires not just that strong local leadership, but also those within government at the top who believe in this mission. And we are so fortunate that our Chancellor of the Exchequer has been absolutely clear that levelling up is essential to our economic success. When Jeremy laid out the ingredients of economic success overall, talking about entrepreneurship, talking about the importance of educational excellence, he also talked about the importance of everywhere, the importance of making sure that every part of the United Kingdom played its part. And that is why Jeremy is creating new investment zones across the country, specifically to catalyse those changes. And those investment zones will be a mixture of a strong private sector player, a strong leading higher education and research institution, and strong local government leadership, bringing those ingredients together exactly as we laid out in the white paper. But it's also why we're fortunate to have Rishi as our Prime Minister. Rishi, when he was Chancellor of the Exchequer, walked the walk on levelling up. he moved the Treasury, key mandarins, essential decision makers, the number 2 official there, just behind the permanent secretary, to Darlington in the northeast. He ensured that Ben Houchen and other metropolitan mayors had the powers and the resources that they need to make a difference in their area. He introduced the Levelling Up Fund in order to make sure that the pride in place that we all feel was reflected in the government investment required in order to give it appropriate effect. And he's also been at the heart of our mission, which George Freeman and Michelle Donlan and Chloe Smith are now championing, of making sure that the government's research and development funding is spread more equally in order to ensure that private sector research and development funding can be the generator of, the instigator of greater growth overall. So Levelling Up 2.0, and in due course Levelling Up 3.0, Levelling Up 4.0, and Levelling Up 5.0 are all essentially iterations of the Conservative vision that Benjamin Disraeli articulated and that Michael Heseltine gave effect to. It is essentially about renewing one nation. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Great stuff, as we would expect from Michael, and thank you very much. Now, we've got 10 minutes. Michael's got to leave at 22, sadly, so I'm going to do a quick fire question round. I'm going to take I feel like an auctioneer. I'm going to take bidders. Who's got their hand up? I see you, sir. Yes, thank you very much. I'll take short and snappy question would be welcome.
Good evening. Thank you very much indeed, Secretary of State. Andrew Jimison, Deputy Leader at Norfolk County Council. My question is, of course, Norfolk is one of the trailblazers of county deals. How important are county deal to levelling up agenda?
Hugely. For people who are not familiar with the technical detail of local government organisation, county deals are our effort to ensure that local government at county level, at that upper tier, gets the additional power and investment required in order to make a significant and enhanced difference to the lives of its citizens. As I mentioned earlier, I am a strong believer in the principle of direct accountability at the lowest sensible level. Our district councils, and we have a fantastic representative of a Norfolk district council here, and indeed a fantastic champion of district councils overall in Sam Chapman-Allen, are very effective voices for their communities in the area of everything from planning to waste. And they also act as I know, highly successful advocates in making sure that those in central government have their feet kept close to the ground. But it's also the case that counties have a function, and particularly in somewhere like Norfolk, I think a growing function when it comes to economic development overall. As you know far better than me, Norfolk is a county of contrasts, pleasing contrasts in many ways. So you have in Norwich not just the home in UEA to an outstanding university, but also growing research, particularly in those areas that relate to food production, which will be determinative of our future. And we need to make sure that the scientific advances and the broader educational excellence clustered around Norwich, but not restricted to it, operate successfully to attract more investment. But Norwich is also a microcosm of the United Kingdom, because we have, particularly on the eastern coast, particularly in communities like Yarmouth and Caister, communities where the economic rationale of the past, which would have been tourism, has gone. So we need to make sure that the transport connections are there, so that those who are travelling from Yarmouth through Acle to Norwich can get to the jobs and then get back to their homes in a way that makes economic sense. And ultimately, it is only local leadership, it is only the county that is capable of looking at all of the different investment opportunities and making those judgments. And that's why I think the whole point about a county deal is the progressive devolution of control over the individual funds that central government has been responsible for disbursing. So rather than you having to jump through a multiple set of hoops designed by ministers and civil servants in Whitehall, you make those decisions and then you're accountable for them at the ballot box thereafter.
Thank you very much. Kevin MacLeod.
a set of messages from central government to say that local authorities can set their own building regulations, providing that they're set higher than the national minimum set by national government. The difficulty here is that there is rather like a sort of Damocles hanging over local authorities, this concern that the planning inspectorate are using a 2015 ministerial statement, written ministerial statement from the then Secretary of State. And that stymies and queers the pitch for them. They're worried that if they proceed with local plans and the investment in those local plans, that somehow this is going to be used against them. And this is despite more recent changes in tack from central government. So can I ask you to make a really clear statement here about that 2015 statement and whether or not it holds any weight at all still, and whether or not local authorities can continue to set their own building standards?
Well, let me look at the detail. If we're talking, Kevin, about the number of homes that people want to build in the Lancaster area, then I would welcome, and it seems from what you say that Lancaster Council is providing, a level of ambition higher than that that's been laid down in the local housing need allocations with which local authorities work. And Lancaster, again, has a fantastic university. It's obviously close to significant industrial centres and significant industrial players like British Aerospace. So we should be doing more in order to support that. My offer is that I'll come with you to Lancaster and visit Lancaster and Fleetwood if you'd like me to, and let's look at the situation on the ground so that together we can try and resolve it.
Sounds like a television programme out of that one. Chris Hope?
Will a fall in house prices help levelling up? And what will you do to help families facing soaring mortgage costs, or are they on their own?
I missed the first question, Christopher, sorry.
I wonder what you thought the effect of falling house prices might be on the levelling up agenda, Penny.
The two questions in a way are connected because we have a situation in the housing market at the moment where we've noted, as you say, in some areas, house prices falling, and we also have, as you quite rightly point out, increased mortgage costs, and the two are intimately connected. You know, the fact that interest rates have risen, that mortgage costs have increased, means that it is simply more difficult to have access to mortgage finance. That means that the current demand for housing, I mean, obviously there's a huge demand for housing, but the current demand for housing that people can give expression to in saying, here I am, I'm putting in a bid, has been dampened. Naturally, the ideal is to have a situation where people can have access to mortgage finance on a long-term sustainable basis. So one of the things that I think is right for levelling up overall is making sure that we can develop the types of products that they get elsewhere in the world, particularly in countries like Canada, which are long-term, fixed-rate mortgages, so you don't get the oscillation in how much you pay every 2 or 5 years, but you have certainty over as long as 25 years about what you pay. And I think that is something that we should look at. The second thing that I would also say is, as the Chancellor's reminded us, and as I tried to articulate on Laura Koonsberg yesterday, the root cause of the problem is inflation. In order to defeat inflation, we need to make sure that interest rates are at an appropriate level. If we embark on unfunded spending commitments, then we risk having more inflationary pressure in the system for longer and interest rates being higher for longer, which is in no one's interests, least of all those who currently have mortgages. So what we need to do is to have the big, hairy, audacious goal of reducing inflation as the most important task in mind to help people with mortgages.
Thank you. Adam Payne?
Thanks, Robert, and good evening, Secretary of State. Adam Payne from Politics Home. If we accept the assumption that the next election will be late 24, and of course that assumption's up for debate, how much realistically can the government achieve on levelling up before that point? Is there a risk of you having not a great deal to show for your policy and for your intentions come that point?
I think we've already achieved a fantastic amount. I think on levelling up and in so many other areas, my view is that there's a lot done, a lot to do, and a lot to lose if Labour get in. A lot done. When Labour were last in power, the only area outside Scotland and Wales to which they granted devolution was London. The growth in devolution, the empowerment of local government, the creation of champions of levelling up has happened with a Conservative government. Whatever one thinks of Andy Burnham, it's only because of the position that George Osborne took that we have a mayor of the Greater Manchester Combined Authority. Andy Street and Ben Houchen would not have been able to provide the transformation that they have in their areas if it hadn't been for the courage of a Conservative government in making those changes. Similarly, if you look at one of the really important drivers of improved prosperity and greater equality across our country, education. We are now a country where the children in our schools are the best readers in the Western world. In international comparisons, when it comes to reading, they're only bested by those in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Russia. And we have to doubt whether or not the Russian figures are as reliable as those from Hong Kong and Singapore. Now, these are long-term changes that were made as a result of the original decisions made under the coalition government. Subsequent to that, we've picked up the pace in particular areas, and the Levelling Up White Paper identifies how we've done so. You're right, of course, that we're operating against headwinds created by the aftermath of the pandemic and by the war in Ukraine. And my good friend Ed Balls has pointed out recently that considering the number of external shocks that this government has had to face, it's done a very good job in continuing to drive forward its agenda and economic growth. So I don't know when the next general election will be, but there is a lot more that we will be able to do, a lot that we've done, and then after we've won the general election, even more to do.
One more. Yes, the lady there in pink.
Thank you, Secretary of State. I work at a charity that supports young people and children in West London, and I wanted to ask you, you've spoken about the role of the private sector, and you've also spoken about the importance of local government and their leadership. What role do you see for the third sector in supporting the delivery of levelling up? Because charity that I work at, called West London Zone, is very active across 4 boroughs in West London, and obviously we're working day in, day out with a lot of these young people, and we have a lot of insights we want to share on some of the solutions that could be further supported to achieve the mission.
Well, the third sector, the voluntary sector, civic leadership, community organisation is absolutely critical to levelling up. The West London Zone is an exemplar organisation, and for those who don't know, it was founded by and created by Danny Kruger, Member of Parliament for Devizes, along with many others. It works with children in disadvantaged circumstances. It works with people who've come into contact with the criminal justice system, and it works on the basis of quiet but effective partnership. And it's driven by a sense of mission about the capacity of the right interventions to redeem any individual, no matter how hopeless their circumstances might be. One of the hearts of the Levelling Up White Paper has been a commitment to taking some of the lessons from the work that Danny and others have led and making sure that other communities are in a position to do that. And some of the things that we can do are provide just sometimes the small sums of money that can potentially be transformative in acting as seed corn for that change. And in the white paper, there are, for example, details about something we call the Community Ownership Fund, which allows local government and civic organisations to take back control of assets, which can act as the physical home or which can act as the revenue generator for the sort of good work that the West London Zone does and that so many other wonderful charities and voluntary groups do.
Well, thank you very much. I think that is the witching hour. Michael promised to stay with us until 22, so my apologies to those I couldn't reach, but thank you very much indeed for the questions. Michael, a big thanks to us for your support for this.